All right, Rich Van Tassel with you, giving you the breakdown for Sunday's games of Week 13 in the NFL. Starting off with the Seattle Seahawks and the Minnesota Vikings. The Seahawks crushed the Vikings 38-7. Seattle moves up to 7-5. Minnesota drops to 8-4. They are no longer in the division lead, and these are now the two teams occupying the wild card spots in the NFC. For the visiting Seahawks, Russell Wilson very efficient, 21 of 27, 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Thomas Rawls continues to play very well, and you got to wonder if Marshawn Lynch's days are numbered in Seattle. 19 carries, 101 yards, that's 5.3 yards per carry. Russell Wilson, 9 for 51, that's 5.7. Both of them had a touchdown. Overall, 36 for 173, which is 4.8 yards per carry, and the 2 touchdowns. Doug Baldwin was the top receiver, 5 receptions for 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett, 7 for 90. Luke Wilson, 2 for 36. Thomas Rawls did lose a fumble. The team had 4 sacks. Earl Thomas had an interception. Tyler Lockett did have a 47-yard kick return. And nothing of note in the punt returns. Hauschka made his field goal. For the Vikings, Teddy Bridgewater, 17-28, 118 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Running the ball, Minnesota was not effective at all. Jerick McKinnon, 4 for 18. Adrian Peterson, 8 for 18. Overall, 16 for 31, so not going to get the job done. That did include 2 negative-yard runs, though, one of -6 and 2 of -1. So skewed the numbers really poorly in that regard, but wouldn't have been much better either way. Mike Wallace, 2 for 43 in the receiving game. Jarius Wright, 2 for 24. Teddy Bridgewater fumbled. It was not lost. Antoine Exum Jr. recovered the fumble of Seattle. They had 2 sacks, no interceptions. Cordero Patterson did have a big day returning the ball, 5 for 198, which is just under 40 yards per return. Did have a 101-yard touchdown. However, we've discussed you don't want to have that many returns in a game because it means the other team's scoring a lot. Blair Walsh didn't kick any field goals. All right, so Seattle really looking sharp. As we said, they're coming along. Division almost certainly out of reach. They would have to win out and hope that Arizona only wins one more game the rest of the way. So it's highly unlikely, but still potential there. But no one's going to want to face this team in the playoffs. They're a veteran team. They probably feel like they can go anywhere and win. So they're just looking to get in the playoffs. They're looking to get their groove together. So a few weeks ago when they were 4-5, I thought Russell Wilson was a little too easy going about it, but I can see why. He has all the confidence in the world, and he knows this team's going to get better. Minnesota has to hold on to that wild card. Shouldn't be too difficult because they've already lost to the Packers, and the Packers play them again. So I believe, yeah, that game is going to be in Green Bay. So it's going to be hard for Minnesota to get that division down the stretch. But they just got to regroup from this, get Adrian Peterson involved in the offense, and move on from there. Certainly, you don't want to have a game like this where you get pounded really allow you to have your season ruined. They just have to put it behind them. All right, up next, the Jets beat the Giants 23-20 in overtime. The Jets moved to 7-5. The Giants dropped to 5-7. For the visiting Jets, Ryan Fitzpatrick, 36 of 50, 390 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Chris Ivory, 10 for 47. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 5 for 22. Altogether, 24 of 90 running the ball. Brandon Marshall through the air, receiving 12 for 131 and a touchdown. Eric Decker, 8 for 101. Bilal Powell, 8 for 91 and a touchdown out of the backfield. Chris Ivory lost a fumble. They had 3 sacks. Rontez Miles had an interception. Antonio Cromartie in the return game, 3 for 78, which is 26 yards per return. He had a long of 35, so that's not too bad. Randy Bullock made all 3 of his field goals. For the Giants, Eli Manning, 18 of 34, 297 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Running the ball, Orleans Darkwa was the top runner, 8 for 23, that's 2.9. Andre Williams, 6 for 22. Rashad Jennings, 5 for 14. That's 3.7 for Williams, 2.8 for Jennings. Overall, 24 for 74, 3.1 yards per rush. Odell Beckham Jr., big day, 6 receptions, 149 yards. It's 24.8 per reception, 1 touchdown. Will Tye, 3 for 70. Jason Pierre-Paul recovered the fumble. Giants had 3 sacks, no interceptions. Dwayne Harris was good in the kick return, 4 for 104. That's 26 yards per return. In the punt return, 2 for 96, had an 80-yard touchdown. Josh Brown was 2 for 3, missed a field goal in overtime that would have extended the game. All right, so first things first with this game, a lot of questions as to why when Tom Coughlin was up 20-10, it was at about the Jets' 4-yard line, went for it on 4th and 2. I don't really see any issue with this whatsoever. A field goal only puts you up 13. The argument is, well, the Jets would have needed 2 touchdowns instead of being able to kick a field goal and score a touchdown. Okay, understandable. It did end up happening that the Jets kicked the field goal and not a touchdown. The Jets were inside the 10, though, when they kicked that field goal. A lot of things could have gone differently. I'm sure the play calling would have been a lot different. They also would have gone for it on 4th down. So the potential was still there for the Jets to score both of the touchdowns. If the Giants score a touchdown there, the game's almost certainly over. People are saying, well, the defense is so bad. That's why you kick the field goal. That doesn't really make much sense to me. The defense is so bad, you don't want to give up 2 touchdowns. And in this case, it's still allowed for a tie to happen. Had you gone up 23-10, the Jets would have just won the game by 1 point had they got 2 touchdowns. Would that have made the loss any less heartbreaking? The bottom line here is Ryan Fitzpatrick was the guy making the plays down the stretch. It's really plain and simple. You got to give him credit. He didn't turn the ball over. He's really starting to wear on me this year as far as being a guy who's not turning the ball over. I've been critical. I've called for Geno Smith, but it's Ryan Fitzpatrick's team now, and he showed a lot of heart yesterday and got the job done. So the Jets move forward. The Giants obviously still available to win that division the way it's going, but they have got to figure something out. They've lost 4 of their last 5, and another blown lead in the 4th quarter, so we'll see where they move from here. All right, the Cardinals throttled the Rams 27-3. Boy, was I wrong about this one. I thought that St. Louis was going to have one of their games where they popped up and got a surprising win. Cardinals are now 10-2. St. Louis drops to 4-8. Carson Palmer 26-40, 356 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. David Johnson was the running back with the injuries to Chris Johnson and Ellington. He was 22 of 99 for 4.5. Kerwin Williams 6 for 59, 9.8, and a touchdown. Altogether 36 for 175, 4.9 yards per rush, and 1 touchdown. John Brown was the top receiver, 6 for 113. Michael Floyd 7 for 104. Larry Fitzgerald 8 for 55. J.J. Nelson 2 for 34 had the touchdown. David Johnson fumbled and was not lost. Team didn't have any sacks. Rashad Johnson had an interception. Nothing really of note in the punter kick returns. Chandler Catanzaro made both of his field goals. For the Rams, Nick Foles, man, is he just not a good quarterback. 15 of 35, 146, 0 touchdowns, 1 interceptions. No wonder this Rams team can't win anything. St. Louis are running the ball. Todd Gurley 9 for 41, 4.6 yards per rush. So he's been the only bright spot for this team. Tavon Austin 2 for 14. Altogether 15 for 66, 4.4 yards per rush. You'd say, why would they abandon it? Well, they had to because they're getting crushed. Kenny Britt 2 for 41 in the receiving. Tavon Austin 1 for 24. They just can't get anything going in the passing game with their quarterback play. Jared Crook fumbled once. It was not lost. They had 2 sacks. No interceptions. Benjamin Cunningham 4 returns for 129 yards, which is 32.3 yards per return, along with 41. Again, though, you don't want that many returns. Zach Hocker made his field goal. All right, so Arizona, it's going to be hard for them to get the home field advantage because they're 2 games back of Carolina with 4 to play. They would have to win out, essentially, and that would mean Carolina could only go 2-2 the rest of the way. It's certainly possible for Carolina to go 2-2, but Arizona would have to then win out. So they're still playing, though. They still got a lot on the line, and they may just be locked into that 2 spot, though, so we'll see how hard they play it down the stretch. As for St. Louis, what can you say? They're just not a good team this year, and that 4-3 start looks like an aberration, and who knows what they're going to do. They obviously got to solve the quarterback situation, but that's one of those things that's pretty obvious. But Nick Foles, there's bad, and then there's this. It's just been terrible all year. I don't know why they ever made that trade for Nick Foles. Moving on, Atlanta lost on the road 19-23 or 23-19. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers won. Atlanta drops to 6-6. Tampa Bay moves up to 6-6. Matt Ryan, 30 of 45, 269 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Devontae Freeman, 14 carries, 47 yards, 3.4 yards per rush. Tevin Coleman, 3 for 13. Overall, the team was 18 of 64, which is 3.9 yards per rush, or 3.6 yards per rush. Julio Jones, 8 receptions, 93 yards. Devontae Freeman, 10 for 56 out of the backfield. Matt Ryan fumbled, it was not lost. Ricardo Allen recovered a fumble. 1 sack. Desmond Trufant had an interception. Nothing really of note in the kicker punt return. Shane Graham was 4 for 4 in his field goals. For the Buccaneers, Jameis Winston, 18 of 27, 227 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Doug Martin running the ball, 25 for 95, 3.8 yards per rush, a touchdown. Charles Sims, 7 for 56, 8 yards per rush. Altogether, the team was 37 of 166, which is 4.5 yards per carry with the 2 touchdowns. Jameis Winston ran for the other touchdown. Vincent Jackson, 3 for 87. In receiving game, Mike Evans, 5 for 61 and a touchdown. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, 3 for 31. Doug Martin fumbled the ball that was lost and recovered by Ricardo Allen. They had 3 sacks. Levante David had an interception. Bobby Rainey in the punt return, 2 for 41, which is 20.5 yards per return. Pretty good. Connor Barth made his field goal. All right, so Atlanta has now lost 5 of their last 6. They're at 6-6, and just completely plummeting. Tampa Bay has gotten themselves back to 500 this late in the season, so you've got to give them credit there. Both of these teams are now a game back of Seattle. I don't think Atlanta's catching anyone. Atlanta very well could lose out at this point. It's just gone completely awry for them. Tampa Bay, I don't think is going to lose out. I think they may even get above 500. However, I don't think that either one of these teams is going to catch the Seattle Seahawks because they're too good of a team. But certainly, hats off to Tampa Bay this year, the way they're playing and the way Jameis Winston is coming along. All right, next up, the Buffalo Bills won at home over the Houston Texans, 30-21. Houston drops to 6-6. Buffalo improves to 6-6. For the visiting Texans, Brian Hoyer, 26 of 43, 293 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Chris Polk, the top rusher, 12 for 61. That's 5.1 yards per carry. Jonathan Grimes, 5 for 28, 5.6 yards per carry. Altogether, the team was 26 of 126, which is 4.8 yards per carry. Cecil Shorts III, the top receiver, 6 for 91. DeAndre Hopkins, 5 for 88. He had a touchdown. Nate Washington, 6 for 44. No fumbles either way, recovered or lost. 1 sack. No interceptions. Nothing in the special teams game. No field goals attempted. Only 1 kick return. For Buffalo, Tyrod Taylor, 11 for 21, 211 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. LaShawn McCoy, 21 for 112, 5.3 yards per rush. Mike Gillislee, 7 for 41, 5.9 yards per rush. Tyrod Taylor, 7 for 28, 4 yards per rush, 1 touchdown. Sammy Watkins, 3 for 109 in the receiving game, 36.3 yards per catch, 1 touchdown. Charles Clay, 4 for 66, had a touchdown. Robert Woods, 2 for 19, he had a touchdown. The team had 2 sacks. Marcus Easley had an interception. Marcus Thigpen in the kick return, 4 for 84, 21 yards per return, so pretty good and pretty consistent. His longest was only 25. Dan Carpenter was 1 for 2 with his field goals. All right, so Buffalo had to have this game. They are now tied with Houston in the wild card. I'm not sure if Houston now takes over the division from Indianapolis, being that Indianapolis also lost yesterday. But Houston and Indianapolis, so whoever doesn't have the tiebreaker is 6-6 with Buffalo, who was 6-6. Buffalo had to have it, obviously, because the top teams in the wild card are the Jets, Chiefs, and Steelers, who are all 7-5. So you got to keep pace. Buffalo probably can't afford the luxury of many more losses, probably one at the most. They've got to be looking at winning out, so had to have this one. Houston still in the wild card as well, but mostly they're focused on the division, especially with the loss by the Colts last night to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which we'll get into in just a bit. All right, next, the Ravens lost. Man, I really missed this one. I missed a lot of games yesterday. Ravens lost on the road to the Dolphins 15-13. Ravens dropped to 4-8. Miami now 5-7. For the visiting Ravens, Matt Schaub 32 of 46, 308 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Javaris Allen running the ball 17 of 63, 3.7 yards per rush. Terrence West 8 of 31, 3.9. Javaris Allen the top receiver 12 for 107, 1 touchdown. Chris Givens 3 for 68. Kamir Akins 6 for 48. Courtney Upshaw recovered a fumble. They only had 1 sack. That was Darryl Smith's. No interceptions. Justin Tucker 2 for 3 in the field goals, which was critical when you lose by 2. Ryan Tannehill, nothing special at all. 9 for 19, 86 yards, 4.5 yards per pass, 1 touchdown. Lamar Miller, 20 of 113, running the ball. Jay Ajayi, 4 for 12, altogether 26 of 137, which is 5.3 yards per rush. Devontae Parker, 3 for 63 and a touchdown. He was the only receiver who had double digits in yards. Lamar Miller lost the fumble that was recovered, only 3 sacks. Derek Shelby and Rashad Jones both had interceptions. Derek Shelby's was returned for a touchdown. So Matt Schaub's streak continues, and that's not good enough. Nothing really in the special teams. No field goals attempted. Nothing special there. Alright, so Baltimore drops to 4-8. They're out of it. Miami basically has to look to win out at this point. They're trying to hold on. Matt Schaub obviously is a quarterback who cannot get his turnover issues straight. Ryan Tannehill is a quarterback who just can't play. He got away with it yesterday because the team bailed him out, but neither one of these teams is going to be playing postseason football at this point. Okay, Cincinnati throttled Cleveland 37-3. The Browns are bad. Cincinnati now 10-2. Cleveland drops to 2-10. For the visiting Vikings, Andy Dalton 14 of 19, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Jeremy Hill running the ball 22 of 98. That's 4.5 yards per rush, 1 touchdown. Giovanni Bernard 5 for 26, which is 5.2 yards per rush. Altogether, the team 33 for 144 in the running the ball, 4.4 yards, and the 2 touchdowns. A.J. Green, 5 for 128 and a touchdown in the receiving game. Marvin Jones, 5 for 55. He also had a touchdown. Ray Maluga recovered a fumble. They had 3 sacks. Reggie Nelson, an interception. Mike Nugent made all 3 of his field goals. Austin Davis, 25 of 38, 230 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Isaiah Crowell, 11 for 62, running the ball. That's 5.6 yards per carry. Altogether, 19 of 68, which is 3.6 yards per carry. So the rest of the guys clearly brought the average down in that regard. Brian Hartline, 8 for 83. Gary Barnidge, 5 for 59. Darius Jennings, 5 for 35. That's in the receiving department. No touchdowns for them. Austin Davis lost the fumble that was recovered by Maluga on the other side. Only 1 sack. Travis Coons, 1 for 2 in the field goal. Now, looking at Cleveland's numbers, it's hard to believe they only scored 3 points. They were pretty respectable, and even the 1 turnover, or the 1 interception, 1 fumble shouldn't have cost you that hard, but I don't know. The game I didn't see. As for Cincinnati, they're moving along, and they're now right in it for home field advantage with the New England loss. And Denver won as well, so those 3 teams are tied at 10-2. Very interesting coming down the stretch. We'll see if Cincinnati can get the number 1 overall seed or which team ends up getting it. But they certainly have a lot to play for, and they've righted the ship after those 2 straight losses they had not long ago. Alright, Tennessee able to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in a wild game. It was a shootout. Tennessee gets up to 3-9. Jacksonville, boy, they really let down since getting to 4-6. They dropped, or to 4-5, that is for Jacksonville. They dropped to 4-8 now. No, it was 4-6. They've lost their last 2. Alright, Blake Bortles, 24 of 36. This is for the visiting Jaguars, 322 yards, 5 touchdowns to no interceptions. He's really had a good year. Not a spectacular quarterback year, but certainly an improved year, and he's letting it be known that he is the quarterback of the future there. TJ Yeldon, 15 of 57, 1 touchdown. for one touchdown. That's 3.8 yards per rush. Altogether, 21 of 81, 3.9 yards per rush. Allen Robinson also having a good year, 10 for 153. He had 3 touchdowns. TJ Yeldon, 4 for 79. Probably TJ Yeldon's best game as a pro, which is saying something because it wasn't even that good. Stephon Wisniewski lost a fumble. Ryan Davis recovered a fumble. Wisniewski's was lost. 4 sacks. Devon House had an interception. Jason Myers did not kick any field goals. Marcus Mariota, 20 of 29, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was also the top rusher, 9 for 112, 12.4 for 1 touchdown. Antonio Andrews, 13 for 58, 4.5 yards per rush, 1 touchdown. Altogether, the team 35 of 210, 6 yards per rush, and the 2 touchdowns. Dorial Green-Beckham, 5 for 119 in the receiving game. That's 23.8 yards per catch, 1 touchdown. Delaney Walker, 8 for 92. He also had a touchdown. Marcus Mariota fumbled and lost his fumble. Wesley Woodyard recovered the fumble of the Jaguars. They had 2 sacks, no interceptions, and no field goals were kicked at all in this game. So, Jacksonville, how are they going to close out this season? To show that they're improving. Can they keep themselves under 10 wins? We'll have to see. I mean, they had a shot at the playoffs at this point. Still technically have a shot in that division, which is terrible. But they would have to win out, essentially. Tennessee, hey, nice to see them win and improving down the stretch. I thought they should have benched Mariota with the hits he's been taking. But they didn't. They're still running a lot, which I'm surprised. We'll see how they close out the end of the season. Maybe try to get a chance at 10 or 6 wins here or something. Just be professional down the stretch. We'll see how they close out. But certainly a very exciting game for 2 bad teams. Next, the Bears are going to be kicking themselves for this one. Pun intended, considering they missed a field goal at the end of the game that would have won it. They lost to the 49ers in overtime, 26-20. 49ers are now 4-8. Chicago drops to 5-7 and really took a hit to their playoff chances. Blaine Gabbert for the visiting 49ers, 18 of 32, 196 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Blaine Gabbert was the top rusher, 6 for 75, 12.5 yards per rush, 1 touchdown. Sean Drone, 13 of 36, 2.8 yards per rush. He had 1 touchdown. Torrey Smith, the top receiver, 2 for 76. That's 38 yards per reception. He had a touchdown. Sean Drone, 5 for 50. Anquan Boldin, 5 for 37. Only 1 sack. Jimmy Ward had an interception that was returned for a touchdown. Bruce Ellington in the return game, 4 for 98. That's 24.5 yards per return. Pretty good. Phil Dawson did not kick a field goal. For the Bears, Jay Cutler, 18 of 31. 202 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Matt Forte, the top runner, 21 of 84 for a touchdown. That's exactly 4 yards per rush. Jeremy Langford, 12 for 59, 4.9 yards per rush. That is Kadeem Carey, 5 for 17. Altogether, the team 42 for 170 running the ball. That's 4 yards per rush with the 2 touchdowns. Alshon Jeffrey really improving. 4 for 85, 21.3 yards per reception. Matt Forte, 5 for 39. Martellus Bennett had a fumble. It was not lost. 4 sacks. Deontay Thompson, 2 returns for 92 yards. He had a long of 74. Robbie Gould was due for 4, so he missed 2 field goals and the game winner. Critical. Terrible loss for Chicago. They almost certainly cannot get the wild card now because they're chasing Seattle. They really had to have this one. San Francisco, hey, give them credit. They didn't quit. They're up to 4-8. They're going to try to finish the season out, see where they go from there. And then it's nice for this team to get wins. They had been successful in the past, so they don't want to fall too far off the map. So good to see them get this win yesterday. But Chicago really, I believe it was like a 33-yarder that would have won it by Robbie Gould at the end of the game. So tough loss for them. All right, the Broncos beat the Chargers 17-3. Broncos 10-2. Chargers are 3-9. Brock Osweiler for the visiting Broncos, 16 of 26, 166 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Ronnie Hillman running the ball, 19 for 56, that's 2.9 yards per rush. C.J. Anderson, 7 for 42, 6 yards per rush. Altogether, 39 of 134, 3.4 yards per rush. Demaryius Thomas, 6 for 61, 1 touchdown receiving. Vernon Davis, 2 for 25. Darian Stewart recovered a fumble. Von Miller recovered a fumble. They had 4 sacks. 2 of them belonged to Von Miller. Danny Trevathan had an interception return for a touchdown. Brandon McManus was 1 for 2 for his field goals. Phillip Rivers, one of his more pedestrian games this season, 18 of 35, 202 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Melvin Gordon, 12 for 55, 4.6 yards per rush. Donald Brown, 7 for 26, altogether 23 of 93, 4 yards per rush. Antonio Gates, 6 for 50 receiving. Donald Brown, 1 for 31. Javonte Herndon, 2 for 30. Danny Woodhead, 3 for 24. So was not finding his big targets. Phillip Rivers, that is. Melvin Gordon did fumble twice. He's really had a problem with that this season. Lost one of them. Malcolm Floyd also lost his fumble. They only had 1 sack. Jason Verrett had an interception. Josh Lambo missed one of his field goals. He was 1 for 2. Alright, so for the Broncos first, Brock Osweiler showing he still has a lot of improvement to go. I believe Peyton Manning should be healthy for next week. I expect him to get the start. It's going to be a tough one. Certainly, the Broncos now know that they can go to Osweiler if Manning continues to struggle. But you have to give it back to Peyton Manning at this point. Brock Osweiler has played well, but he's certainly shown that he is not always consistent and not always sharp. For the Chargers, I would look to see them get Melvin Gordon going the rest of the year, see if he can work on his fumbles. Had over 4 yards per rush yesterday. It's really going to be the most important thing for them down the stretch because their season has been long over. Alright, the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Oakland Raiders 34-20, almost certainly dashing my hopes that the Raiders would make the playoffs, my surprise team at the beginning of the season. Kansas City has now won 6 straight. They are cruising and right in the playoff chase. They're tied with the Jets and the Steelers at 7-5 for the 3 wildcard spots. I believe them and the Jets own it, and Pittsburgh is on the outside looking in as of right now. For the visiting Chiefs, Alex Smith continues to be efficient. 16 of 22, 162 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Charkandrick West, 9 for 35 running the ball. That's 3.9 yards per rush. Spencer Ware, 7 for 26. That's 3.7. He had a touchdown. Alex Smith, 5 for 23. That's 4.6. He also had a touchdown. Altogether, 22 of 89, 4 yards per rush, 2 touchdowns. Jeremy Maclin starting to come into form. 9 receptions for 95 yards, 2 touchdowns. Travis Kelce, 2 for 42. Jeremy Maclin fumbled, it was lost. Travis Kelce also fumbled, and it was lost. The team had 4 sacks. Derek Johnson had 1 of them. Frank Zombo had 2. 3 interceptions, 1 for Tyvon Branch, 1 for Josh Mauga. Tyvon Branch returned his for a touchdown, and Marcus Peters had 1 for 58 yards he returned. So all of them were returned for a bunch of yards as well, so that killed Oakland in that regard. Marcus Peters continues to play very well. Niles Davis had a kick return for 33 yards, so good in that regard. They did not kick any field goals. Derek Carr, 31 of 48, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns. The 3 interceptions really hurt them. Latavius Murray, 20 for 86, 4.3 yards per rush, 1 touchdown. Chamiz Owale, 2 for 16, altogether 24 for 99 running the ball with the 1 touchdown, 4.1 yards per rush. Amari Cooper, 4 for 69. Clive Walford, 5 for 53. Seth Roberts, 4 for 51. Michael Crabtree was 5 for 45, and Lee Smith 1 for 5 in the receiving game. The latter 2 had the touchdowns. Latavius Murray fumbled twice, none were lost. Derek Carr fumbled, none were lost. Charles Woodson recovered 2 fumbles. Khalil Mack had 2 sacks. They had 4 sacks total. And Sebastian Janikowski missed the field goal. So the Chiefs, obviously, as we just discussed, are on a 6-game winning streak. They're very hot right now. We're going to see if they can be slowed down the rest of the way and if they can ride this all the way to the playoffs. For Oakland, almost certainly finished at this point, probably a year away. I'm a little surprised because this team has good balance offensively as far as passing and running game. Probably throw the ball just a bit too much, but that's something they can figure out. They've just got to work the rest of the way, see if they can get to 500 and take it from there for the rest of the season. Okay, the Carolina Panthers stay undefeated. They won a shootout over the Saints, 41-38. Carolina is now 12-0. The New Orleans Saints dropped to 4-8. I thought the Saints might win this game, but Carolina, even had the Saints won this game, it wouldn't have necessarily been the right pick because I was expecting Carolina to not come out sharp after that long layoff, and they were certainly sharp yesterday, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Cam Newton, 28 of 41, 331 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. Jonathan Stewart, 21 for 82, 3.9 yards per rush, 1 touchdown. Cam Newton, 10 for 49. Mike Tolbert, 2 for 33, altogether 34 for 175, 5.1 yards per rush, and the touchdown. Greg Olsen, big time game, 9 catches for 129 yards. Ted Ginn Jr., 5 for 80, 2 touchdowns. Jericho Cotchery and Mike Tolbert also had touchdowns. Cotchery had the game-winning touchdown. Greg Olsen and Jonathan Stewart both fumbled and both lost the fumble. They only had 2 sacks. Kirk Coleman had an interception. No field goals attempted. I'm a little surprised. I don't know how they got to 41 points without attempt. Oh, that's right. They had a extra point block that was returned for 2-point conversion. For the Saints, Drew Brees, 24 of 42, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Mark Ingram, 12 for 56, 4.7 yards per rush, 1 touchdown. Drew Brees, 1 for 12 running. Overall, 14 for 70. Brandon Cooks, 6 for 104 and a touchdown. Brandon Coleman, 4 for 73 and a touchdown. Benjamin Watson, 4 for 38 and a touchdown. Mark Ingram fumbled, but it was not lost. Kenny Vaccaro and Stephon Anthony recovered the fumbles for the Saints. 1 sack. Delvin Breaux had an interception. Kai Forbath missed this field goal. So, Carolina, how long can they keep this up? I'd actually, a little encouragement for Giants fans. I'm looking at that game being the one loss for Carolina. Kind of why, as a Cowboy fan, I was hoping the Saints would win this game so they would get that loss out of the way. But Carolina doesn't have much to play for down the stretch. They should lock up home field advantage relatively soon. For the Saints, a bad year. I expect some changes in the coaching department next year, and maybe even Drew Brees moves on. Who knows? Because this team doesn't seem to have it defensively at all. All right, the Philadelphia Eagles beat the New England Patriots 35-28. Eagles are now 5-7. New England Patriots dropped their second straight to 10-2. For the visiting Eagles, Sam Bradford, 14 of 24, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Darren Sproles was the top rusher, 15 for 66, 4.4 yards per rush. Kenjon Barber, 9 for 39, 4.3 yards per rush. DeMarco Murray, 8 for 24. Overall, 33 for 128, 3.9 yards per rush. Jordan Matthews, 3 for 36 receiving. He had a touchdown. Darren Sproles, 4 for 34. Brent Selleck, 1 for 16. Kenjon Barber lost the fumble. Jordan Matthews fumbled, but it was not lost. The team had 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, one by Malcolm Jenkins, the other by Byron Maxwell. The Jenkins one was returned 99 yards for a touchdown. Darren Sproles, 5 for 115 in the punt return, had an 83-yard touchdown. Caleb Sturgis did not kick any field goals. Philly also blocked a punt that was returned for a touchdown. Tom Brady, 29 of 56, 312 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Danny Amendola actually threw a pass to Tom Brady for 36 yards. LeGarrette Blount, 13 for 54, 4.2 yards per rush. Brandon Bolden, 3 for 22, altogether 25 for 103, which is 4.1 yards per rush. Tom Brady had a rushing touchdown. James White was the top receiver, 10 for 115. Danny Amendola, 7 for 62. Scott Chandler, 4 for 61. All 3 of them had touchdowns. Malcolm Brown recovered a fumble. 1 sack for the team. It was Gerard Mayo's. No interceptions. No field goals attempted. Nothing really of note in the return game. So the Eagles certainly right in it in the NFC East race. They looked done, and certainly I was not expecting them to win this game, as many didn't. However, I don't know how much you really take from this for the Philadelphia Eagles. They had 21 points on a a punt return, an interception return, and a punt block for a touchdown. And they still almost gave this game away late. So their offense is not looking sharp. They're really struggling to run the ball, especially with DeMarco Murray. So, hey, give the Eagles credit. They did get the win in a game that they were almost certainly expected by everyone, including myself, to lose. But I don't know how much positives you take out of it. For New England, they now have to really fight the rest of their way. to ensure home field advantage because they're tied with the Broncos and the Bengals at 10-2 atop that conference. And then finally, the Indianapolis Colts were crushed on the road by the Pittsburgh Steelers, 45-10. Indianapolis drops to 6-6. Pittsburgh improves to 7-5. For the visiting Colts, Matt Hasselbeck, 16 for 26, 169 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Frank Gore, 13 for 45, running the ball. Daniel Herron, 2 for 8, overall 18 for 54, which is only 3 yards per carry. Frank Gore was their top receiver, 3 for 49. He had a touchdown. Andre Johnson, 2 for 44. T.Y. Hilton, 3 for 36. Matt Hasselbeck lost the fumble. They did not have any sacks, no interceptions. A lot of kick returns. We're not even going to get into all the guys who returned because when you give up 45 points, that's what's going to happen. Anna Vinatieri made his field goal. For the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger, 24 for 39, 364 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. D'Angelo Williams turning back the clock, 20 carries for 134 yards, 5.2 yards per rush. Ben Roethlisberger, 1 for 13, altogether 32 for 158, 4.9 yards per rush. Antonio Brown, 8 receptions, 118 yards. That's 2 touchdowns at 14.8 yards per reception. Martavis Bryant, 4 for 114, 28.5 yards per reception and a touchdown. Marcus Wheaton, 3 for 50 and 1 touchdown. He was at 16.7 yards per reception. So they really developed quite a nice receiving core there, especially with Antonio Brown and Martavis Bryant. D'Angelo Williams fumbled twice and lost one of them. Jacoby Jones fumbled twice and also lost one of them. The team had 5 sacks. Jarvis Jones and Brandon Boykin both had interceptions. Antonio Brown had a 71-yard punt return for a touchdown, so he was very good all around yesterday. Chris Boswell, 3 for 4 in the field goal department. So Pittsburgh, as we discussed, they are tied with the Jets and the Chiefs at the same record of 7-5. I believe both the Jets and the Chiefs own the tiebreakers as of right now, but certainly things change towards the end of the year. Pittsburgh almost certainly cannot win that division. They are behind the Bengals, who are 10-2. So Pittsburgh would have to win out, and Cincinnati would only be able to win one more game for Pittsburgh to have any shot. So they've got to set their sights on the wild card. That's why this game was important. Indianapolis is now 1 game out of that those 3-team race in the wild card, but they're tied for the top of the division. So certainly a bigger game for Pittsburgh, because they don't have the luxury of the division to fall back on. Indianapolis is now tied at 6-6 with the Houston Texans, so it should be an interesting division race in the AFC South down the rest of the way. All right, that's your recap for the Sunday games of Week 13 of the NFL. We're going to be back later to give you a breakdown of tonight's Monday Night Football game as the Dallas Cowboys travel to Washington to play the Redskins. We'll see you in a little bit. Thank you so much.